Seated. Well, again, welcome. It's great. It's great to see you. It's great to be back. And you, as you know, we are making our way through this series on our unstoppable God, and talking about it's the theme for our stewardship reflection together, but it is a deep theme for us about this character of God and what it is that God is asking us to do, who it is that He's calling us to be. And the theme for today has to do with God's unstoppable mission. This mission that God has for all of us to be able to be on. And so we want to reflect about that a bit, because the word mission is probably another one of those mainly religious words that we are prone to kind of misunderstanding or being misdirected about. We think about mission in regard to the church often about missionaries. People who are overseas, who are serving people who are very far away, probably undereducated, probably in very kind of economically backward places. We think about those kinds of missionaries, and so we think about them as those other kinds of people. In fact, it's mission regarding people who go overseas and who do that work is an incredibly important part of our life, and it's because of the support of all of us that they're able to do that. So in fact, Patsy McGregor is going to be coming as our director of spiritual formation, and she and her husband Todd have given their life to missions overseas. And so it's an important part of our life together, and yet we have to be careful, because if we think when we think of mission, if we think of people like Patsy, then it's those other guys, those other folks who do mission. And that's not the concept that Jesus has in mind, or the New Testament has in mind for us, because mission has to do with initially calling. It's the response to the call that God has on us and for us, and so we do mission to the extent that we have been called by Him to do that. And so there's this questioning of, so what does it mean for each of us to be called to be on His mission? We can say that at the 7:30 service, Daryl Lester was here, and we can say that when it comes to cooking, it's the chefs, the professional chefs, they're the cooks. Well, let me tell you, I don't know about you, but if I waited around until I had a gourmet meal provided for me and that was all I ate, I would be wasting away a lot farther than I am now. I will tell you that. So all of us are called to learn how to open a can of soup, or how to make a tuna fish sandwich, or to be able to provide for ourselves in terms of cooking. So it is with our calling with God that all of us, if we are breathing, we have experienced the touch of God and the intimacy of Him in our lives. And all of the lessons kind of underscore that for us for today. This beautiful Psalm 139, where each one of us has been knit together by God in our mother's wombs. And so it's almost as if He designed us as we were coming together, every part of our being. And the psalmist is overtaken by the mystery of what it means for us to just be human, that we are formed in His likeness, and that we are marvelously, fearfully, wonderfully made. So for us to be able to pause a bit and to be awestruck at who each one of us are, as we look in the mirror, awestruck at the miracle of who you are. And then to be able to see that as we come out of that marvelous, wonderful making, that it comes from this love relationship, this love relationship that God has with us in putting us together and creating us as His, and then wanting to be able to have a relationship with us, to be able to speak with us, to stir us, to be able to hear His voice, and for us to hear His, and for Him to hear ours. This opportunity for us, and so part of what it means for us as we continue to grow as Christians is that each one of us, every one of us, has a unique calling, a unique conversation, a unique relationship that is unlike anybody else's. And so it's no wonder sometimes we share a general. So when we talk about the baptismal covenant, we talk about the obligations that all of us have as baptized Christians, and that's true. We share common callings, all of us. And yet for each one of us individually, there's an individual call, an individual set of gifts that each one of us has, that God designs us for. And there's a uniquely individual conversation that He has with each one of us as He woos us as our lover, as He woos us to come closer to Him and to be involved with Him. And so then we see in the Old Testament lesson, there's little Samuel he's just a young boy, and he hears the voice of God, and he assumes it's Eli who's his mentor, snoring down the hallway, and he goes down there 3 times. He goes down there. My kids always love this story because they would constantly get up in the middle of the night and we'd just tell them to go back to bed. But so Eli keeps telling him, go back to bed, go back to bed, go back to bed. But then Samuel hears the word of the Lord, that it's the Lord who's calling him. And so Samuel's learning to hear the word of the Lord. And then there's this precious story in the Gospels about Philip, who has this relationship with Jesus and says, this is the guy, this is the one that we've been waiting for. And so he goes to Nathanael and he says, Nathanael, we found him, we found the one, this is Jesus of Nazareth. And when Nathanael hears that, he says, Nazareth? What good can come from Nazareth? I mean, that's just a town of a bunch of troublemakers. Nothing good comes out of Nazareth. And then Philip says, come and see. And so Jesus comes and he meets Nathanael. And Jesus says to him, now here is a man of no guile or no deception. Here's an open and transparent man of character. And Nathanael's reaction in the gospel is, well, how do you know me? You don't know me. How do you know me? And Jesus' response is, well, I saw you under the fig tree. That means absolutely nothing to us. What does it mean that Jesus saw him under the fig tree? It means absolutely nothing to us. But it meant something to Nathanael. And so all of a sudden, all of his defenses and prejudices collapse like a house of cards. And he says, you are the one. You are the Messiah. You are the King of Israel. And so for the rest of us, we're left thinking, so what's about this under the fig tree thing? What is that? We have no idea. We have no idea. That was something that certainly Nathanael knew. So was it that Nathanael under the fig tree was praying that a deliverer would come for Israel? Maybe. Was he confessing some passionate, heart-wrenching sins that he committed? Maybe. Was he talking with somebody else about the importance of what was going on in Israel at the time? Maybe. We have no idea. But the important thing is that Nathanael knew. And only Nathanael knows. And so one day when we get to heaven, I want to be able to go to Nathanael and say, hey, by the way, what was that fig tree thing? But that was between Nathanael and Jesus. They knew. And there are things that are between you and Jesus. And only you know them. And as Jesus speaks them to you, it's at a place of intimacy with you. that only you can understand. That's why it's so critically important for us to be able to have the time to step aside from this busyness, craziness of the world, to be able to step aside and to be able to hear his voice and to let him speak to us about those things that only you know, and that he can bring his love and wrap his arms of love around us and affirm us and to stir us up, because out of that comes the passion to be involved in this outreach of love that he has for us. If we don't experience that, if we don't experience this internal touching of the Lord, then we have no passion. We just kind of go on with our own thing. It means really nothing to us except for trying to do a bunch of good things because we're supposed to. But if we experience this intimacy, this touching of the Lord inside of us, that he is able to tell us things about ourselves that our spouses, our children, nobody else knows, only we know, and he speaks them to us, then suddenly this passion that grows up, and we know with confidence that he's our God and that we can do anything that he calls us to. And so then what do? Well, we are touched, and we are all of a sudden set on fire with his love. And so then we have this opportunity to be able to not fit into some program, not do something that we're supposed to do, but rather explore this love relationship that we have with him. To, if you will, to go to the playground with Jesus and play with him and allow him to take us into places, to try things that maybe nobody else has tried, or to do things, say things that we never thought of, or other people would think are foolish. But all of a sudden, because we have this love relationship with him, we don't care. We can be foolish in the eyes of other people because it's a love relationship. You know, you can tell if somebody's in love with somebody else because when other people are looking at them, they look like idiots. Don't they? When they're love struck, they're just foolish because they'll do anything because they're so grateful to be touched. And so it is that when we begin to fall into deeper and deeper into this love relationship that we have with Jesus, we'll just do anything in order to be able to grow in him and to see him touch us. And there is no failure. It's not possible to screw it up, because it comes from this deep internal change that is happening with us, this internal devotion that comes from our passionate love for him. And so we just try things and we do things, and it's not work, it's fun and it's creative and it's energetic, and so we do things. And so it could be anything. It could involve anything outside in the external world. It could be the way that you use your email. It could be having to do with cooking. It could have to do with sports. It could have to do with astronomy. It could have to do with anything. But bringing this intimate passion that you have with Jesus as we look to express our love and devotion with him. And then that's how mission happens. Mission happens because people who are awestruck by the love of Christ and the love that Christ has for them just start doing things together. And so the community of Jesus does things throughout the day and throughout the week in an unorganized, completely unknowable way. You know, the people in the body of Christ doing little acts of love and encouragement and hope out in the world to be able to bring that good news, but just because the love of Christ overflows from us. But then there are times when there's a constellation of people who come together because of the movement of God's love. There's a woman by the name of Karen Olson. She was back in the early 80s. She was living and working in New York. And she just noticed as she was going through the city that there were homeless people there, well, which is a shock, right? So she began to form a relationship with some of the homeless folks who were there, and she and her 2 sons would bring food to them oftentimes. But what she noticed especially was not just the men and the women who were homeless in New York, but she noticed clusters of families. She noticed families, single moms with kids or couples with kids who were together on the streets. And there were men's shelters and there were women's shelters in New York, but what she found as she got to know those families was that they didn't want to go to the shelters because they were afraid that their families would be broken up. And so they were fighting for their families to stay together, so they're trying to find ways of being able to survive on the streets. And so then she was a woman of faith, and she said, well, you know, our church has some room that we could, if we worked with other churches, we could at least provide a place for them to stay out of the winter here in New York, and we could probably provide some resources to help them get back up on their feet. And so she got a group of about a dozen churches to just offer some space, and on a rotating basis, once a 3 months, the family would go and stay in that church, would stay there for a week, and then go move on to the next church for a week, and the next week, the next church for next week. And all the while, there would be people who were working with the parents to help them have the skills, acquire the skills to become independent. And so that was by then the mid 1980s, 1986, and the organization that we now call Family Promise was birthed. And so Family Promise has now over 200 affiliates in 43 states and uses over 180,000 volunteers in order to be able to support their ministry. 2 years ago, that ministry was attempting to come to Martin County. And we had a meeting here. We brought a proposal to the vestry. The vestry endorsed that we could be a part of a dozen congregations that would make that possible for families in crisis who are homeless here in Martin County. And everything was ready to go, and then the virus hit. And so then everything got mothballed and put in the back. But things, just like here at St. Mary's, for them, things haven't stopped. And so they have purchased a house, which is an education center for them. Families don't stay there, but it's a place for them administratively to be able to function from. And they have their first homeless family that they're working with. That family is not residential with us, but they're working with them in terms of learning skills. And so we are anticipating that time when the vaccine is more fully distributed and we can say goodbye to the coronavirus for us, right? Right? I don't know what your goal is for this next year, but I can tell you what's at the top of my goal for this next year, and that is that we beat this virus. Right? And that we are free in order to be able to do the things that God has called us to be able to do, and to be able to be engaged in and support Family Promise, that's one of them. And so for us to be able to energetically and ambitiously support them as they come to Martin County and are trying to do the things that they can do. And they need support even now as we are looking for the activities for the year 2021. The important thing about that whole story is that there was a woman who was in New York who had a busy life. She was working, she was raising kids, and yet because of her experience of the love of God in her life and this recognition that she had a home and a family and a place to belong, and that she felt the enwrapping of God's love for her. And then she looked out and she saw other families who didn't have the same benefits that she did. And instead of just turning a blind eye, her heart was moved, and she began to just kind of play, just starting to have small conversations with other people, and it began to move. So, mission. It's not about just doing a bunch of good stuff. It's not. If it's about just doing a bunch of good stuff, then we're all just going to burn out, and it's all just going to be a lot of work. It is about having a love relationship with Jesus. It is about, where is Jesus in our lives? Do we hear the sweet pillow talk as he whispers to us of his love and care, of how it is that he has knit us together even from our mother's womb, that we are intentional on his part. We didn't happen by accident. We are the result of his love and his planning for us. And this desire for him to enter into this relationship with us and to continue to have this conversation with us that wakes us up and that moves us individually and then as a collective community, moving out, shining his light, sharing his love, seeing how it is that we can be more and more formed by his love and his character, the principles of his kingdom. Mission, the moving forward of God's people to be able to shine his light and see love and see lives changed. May it be our goal this year, 2021. May it be our goal, no matter what the progress with the virus, no matter what else it is that happens, may it be our goal that we would hear the love voice of Jesus calling you, touching you, reminding you of how passionate he is about you, particularly individually you, and giving you the privilege, the opportunity of seeing his love work through you in a new and powerful way, and have fun along the way. Amen.